This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
What's up, everybody? This is Christian Heimel, host of Press Row here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Press Row, where we talk about the biggest issues in sports with the analysts, experts, and reporters who cover them. No nonsense, hard-hitting interviews on the sports topics you're talking about. A new show comes out every single Thursday. And don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you never miss an episode of Press Row. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
Hello again, everyone, and welcome to Hollywood Happy Place. I am Jerry Strauss. Thank you so much for checking us out this time out. We've got a real cool episode for you with our buddy from the Public House Media family, Sam Kirby. Want to thank you all, as always, for tuning in, checking out current and past episodes. Of course, you can catch us on iTunes or Apple Podcasts or whatever the kids are calling it now. Google, Alexa, iHeartRadio, all the major podcast outlets. Hollywood Happy Place is there, and for that we can thank our family, our friends at Public House Media. What a team, what a great group of shows that are going to educate you, uplift you, entertain you, etc., etc. So check out all the shows in the Public House Media family, but certainly go back in our archives. You can check out some great interviews we've done so far. Everyone from Mayim Bialik from Big Bang Theory to Jewel, one of the great singers from the past 2 decades and recording artists, all the way to William Harper from The Good Place on NBC, which just wrapped up its season. We're talking to everybody from all walks of life in the world of entertainment, TV, movies, music. And this time out, we decided, you know what? Let's talk to someone about something big in entertainment, something that I really like and enjoy, don't get a chance to talk to on here much, which is the family of Marvel comics, movies, TV shows, etc., etc. On the big and small screen, we call it the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the MCU, and I'm a geek for this stuff, folks. Like it, love it, learn to accept it, because I have. From Iron Man to Guardians of the Galaxy and everyone in between, I enjoy everything that has come out of the MCU for the past 10 years. And I thought, who better to chat about that with now that Black Panther is setting records and making Marvel buzzworthy on a whole new level? Who better to talk to than our friend from Cinema Stories right here on Public House Media, Sam Kirby. He's a guy I haven't had a chance to get to know, haven't had a chance to talk to before this, but we share the love for the MCU, and we just had kind of a freestyle chat about all corners of the Marvel Universe. So away we go this week on a Hollywood Happy Place.
All right, I'm just gonna, we'll just start talking. So we're sitting here talking. I'm on the line right now with another member of the Public House Media family, Sam Kirby. Sam, what's going on over there?
I'm nothing much. I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good. I mean, it's great to connect. All of us. Public House Media is so cool because everyone is so helpful. And everyone is so kind of involved in a positive, productive way and trying to make all of our shows their own individual successes. But it's kind of rare to get a chance to actually talk to each other like human beings because, we're all so busy and we all just kind of connect through social media and stuff. So it's cool to talk to you.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's such a great variety of people with different views on different kind of topics. So, yeah, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, and and it's funny because I'm struggling thinking like what kind of a show do I want to do this time out? And of course, like everybody else, I went and I saw Black Panther, and of course, you can't escape all the buzz, all the discussion about Black Panther. And I'm a big MCU guy, from the big screen to TV shows and everything. And I'm just like itching to talk to somebody about this stuff intelligently. And I'm the only geek I know. I don't really know anybody else who follows this stuff on my level. And I'm like, why not do a show about it? And who might possibly be down to discuss this? So I look up and down the Public House Media roster, and I'm like, well, Sam, of course, the host of Cinema Stories, your own show here on Public House Media. And I'm like, well, let's give it a try. And, you were definitely down for it. So you're a big MCU Marvel fan as well, huh?
Yeah, I don't know how much intelligence I can bring, but I do love the whole universe. I think that, it'll be fun to discuss it today.
Yeah. So, let's just start at the beginning a little bit of an origin story, if you will. So where did you first connect with we call it the MCU, and that's what's known as the cinematic universe, which is the movies and the TV shows that started with Iron Man about 10 years ago. But was that the beginning for you as far as your interest in these characters in this world?
Well, actually, I did go, oddly enough, to see the first Iron Man in theaters with my family, but it was when I was about 8 years old, and I couldn't yet grasp what was happening. So then eventually I started following up with the Captain America movie, and then around the time when the Winter Soldier came out in about 2014. That's when I really got invested in it, and I love the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's very cool how all of it's since I was a kid, 8 years old. It's so crazy to think about 10 years ago that I went to see that with my family. That it's just all connected now, and it's really I really love it.
And this is an interesting dynamic we're adding to this conversation. See, we didn't really know each other like that. I didn't know. I mean, so you're kind of a youngin' here in this situation, whereas me, I'm 41 years old, so I have a whole separate history as a teen, like a young teen. There was a period of a few years back then where I was huge into Marvel comics. So I have sort of that baseline interest.
Yeah.
Then, I kind of went away from it for a long, long time. But then when Iron Man was coming out, Iron Man was my favorite character as a kid. So when that movie was coming out, that pulled me back in and made me interested. And now I just love the movies and the TV shows totally separately from the comic books. I don't read the comic books or anything anymore, but I just have that, I have that natural inclination to come back to that world.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the real cool aspects about it, because my dad's about 60-ish, and he just gets a kick out of these movies too, and it's so cool that it can span different age groups. That can kind of connects everyone. Yeah, because I also appeared on the show, also on Public House Media, Beauties and Headcanons with Emily Elmquist, and we talked Thor Ragnarok, and it's just it's so many different kinds of people are just connected through this universe, and it's just a real cool thing to kind of connect people.
Yeah, and they, clearly that's a big part of the Marvel kind of the initiative. It's not just for kids, but I mean, it's such a mind-blowing thing to have that history and to actually come from loving the comic books and then to kind of see that on screen in movie form in such a way that actually does do justice. There's always such a lot of attention and care to making sure that they cater to those comic book fans. They probably don't have to do it, but I think it helps in the long run because it keeps the old school fans loyal while continuing to build new ones who probably have never picked up a comic book in their lives.
Yeah, for sure. And I think they've done a really good job with that. And it's not that they have to follow specific storylines to a T, just that they're kind of respecting the property and what it kind of stands for.
Definitely. And certainly, I mean, we can start with the present day here because all these movies, 10 years worth, and of course, we're probably going to come back and have a lot more to talk about in a few months' time once Avengers Infinity War hits, because that's going to be probably the most game-changing movie that they put out yet. But right now it's all about Black Panther. Black Panther's setting all kinds of records. It's, I believe, now among the top 2 already high-grossing movies in the MCU in all of these 10 years. So it's beaten out a lot of what are considered mega blockbusters. Have you seen Black Panther?
I have seen Black Panther. Yes, I did enjoy it very much. My review actually for Black Panther is coming out tomorrow on the day of this recording, February 27th. So yeah, I did, and I enjoyed it very much. Okay, well, that was just a big spoiler for your review. You just destroyed the whole thing, man. Oh no, I'm so sorry, so sorry. Look, I mean, you're not in the minority. You're hard pressed to find anybody, any review, any critic who has had too much negative to say about Black Panther. It's pretty much been a winner up and down. I think it's really, really interesting because as someone who has seen almost, and I'm a completist, so from the beginning, from Iron Man, I've tried to stay on top of the MCU stuff and see absolutely everything. And it was a lot more manageable in the beginning. Now some things have gotten away from me because there's just too much when you take into account Netflix and everything. But seeing almost everything, I think Black Panther is a very good movie. I don't know that I loved it, quite honestly, as much as the world seems to love it, only because I found like there were some things about it that were very derivative of Marvel movies that we've already seen. And I wonder if that was something that maybe you picked up on a little bit here and there, as far as just sort of general, almost a predictableness. And that's not to say it's a bad thing, but it was definitely kind of a classic Marvel, or I will even say an MCU movie plotline for an origin type story. Oh yeah, for sure. And are we going with spoilers here or not? This is the non-spoiler kind of talk. Oh man, I don't know that there's many people in the world at this point, based on the financials, that haven't seen the movie yet. So I think maybe we do a warning here. There's going to be some spoilers in the next few minutes, guys. But yeah, let's do it. Oh yeah, for sure. And I definitely see that gripe. And the thing is, that's something that I've noticed in a lot of Marvel Cinematic Universe movies. And I don't think that Black Panther is by any means a perfect movie. Because I think in these Marvel movies, there's a certain expectation that it's kind of the hero's journey. During the third act, he kind of falls down, and then there's some sort of conflict at the end with the main bad guy. Usually, in the bad guy has a similar suit as the hero. I will say that although those things do come up, and there's the trope of a Marvel car chase sequence in there as well, like in the Winter Soldier, but I will say that some of the story beats in this movie, just like I thought in a Spider-Man Homecoming, there were some good twists here that I thought kind of flipped expectations. I enjoyed that the villain Eric Killmonger's kind of relationship with T'Challa. I thought that was something that we haven't really seen in a Marvel movie. And I don't think in its execution, I wouldn't say that it's perfect all the time, but I will say that this was one of I think Marvel's best movies do try to tackle subject matters that are bigger than itself. And although I don't think that maybe it wasn't handled as smoothly as, say, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, which really pretty spot on handled its themes pretty well. I think that this is a film that did present bigger ideas than itself, instead of just kind of your average dumb blockbuster movie. Yeah, absolutely. And I will say, anything that I'm downplaying about Black Panther, I do think that it did kind of strike a very unique note in a higher level than the last couple of movies that have preceded it.
there were a couple in there. Doctor Strange is one that I felt was just kind of a movie that was there to establish that he exists. And it felt like there is nothing to me about that movie that was super special or memorable at the level of Black Panther. Ant-Man was amusing. It's watchable. It's on PBS all the time now, which is, it seems to be like a great place for it. But as far as, you know, coming out of that feeling like it was a really special movie, no, I felt like it was just another one of those, you know, origin story movies that establish this is who Ant-Man is. This is where he's at, and that's kind of it. There are a lot of them, in my eyes, have sort of become like versions of what worked for Iron Man, except it's not Iron Man, and they're not Robert Downey Jr. And they're not quite as inventive or well done, because now we're 5, 6, 7, 8 years down the road, so it's not it's not quite as cool anymore. But I mean, you know, Black Panther, I think, is one that, like you said, it did have a lot of heavy messages attached to it and a lot of great performances. I think the world has fallen in love in a totally new way with Michael B. Jordan because of this movie.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, he's such a talent. And him and Ryan Coogler, the director, they've worked together on the indie movie a few years ago, Fruitvale Station, and Creed, which was one of my favorite movies of that year. But Michael B. Jordan is just, he's so charismatic. And from the trailers, and I love Michael B. Jordan, I wasn't really sold on his kind of like delivery of some of the lines, but in the movie, he captured me. He was such a lively presence and a great kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Militant kind of theory and outlook on life compared to T'Challa's more calm and collected kind of way he presents himself. I also I was gonna say just a quick jumping back to the story. I will say that in this movie, during the I believe the last sequence with the character Claw, and through the entire kind of second act there, I will say that with the story, I did not know where it was going at certain aspects with some of the minor characters and how everything was going to wrap up. So that was really surprising and kind of it kind of delighted me to kind of feel like, oh, where's this going in a Marvel movie?
Yeah. No, definitely, especially with some of those characters. And it was one of those movies where you did end up actually being interested in and caring about some of the I don't know if you want to call them lesser, but some of the other players besides the quote unquote main eventers, so to speak. And again, that's not something you can necessarily say for a Doctor Strange to a great extent, or, you know, some of the other movies, some of the characters are just kind of there. But here it felt like it was a full cast, an ensemble cast underneath the main players that all brought their own personalities and their own strengths. You want to see everyone in these movies, in Black Panther, I should say, back for Infinity War, for the sequel, whatever the case may be. You kind of get attached to everybody.
Oh yeah, for sure. The supporting cast was just because I believe Chadwick Boseman is just terrific as T'Challa. I believe that the movie really benefited from introducing him in Civil War, and his kind of storyline in Captain America Civil War was one of the strongest aspects of it. I loved his character in that. And but just being able to see like the new characters kind of hold their own, it makes it really intriguing for the future.
Yeah, it's not that they built a whole character. They really did build a whole new corner of the world, and so little of it that we found out. We'd been to Wakanda twice already. We were there in Age of Ultron, and then of course in Civil War. But there was so much more that they taught us about Wakanda in this movie, but it didn't seem like it was plugged in or forced upon us or something that they just kind of made up last minute. It seemed like a logical progression as we learned more and more about what Wakanda is really all about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, the world building of Wakanda was just phenomenal. And I do enjoy, because a lot of these Marvel movies, like for Thor Ragnarok, for example, or Guardians of the Galaxy, it hits you right away with that action sequence and you're in for your action movie. But for this one, it took its time and really kind of establish the world of it. Some of my favorite scenes were the first scene where they have the initial challenge of T'Challa and just kind of establishing the whole different cultures and tribes. It was just so interesting to see this world being built and such care being put into it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because, you touched on a good point. We've been to, other aspects of the galaxy many a time through Guardians and through Thor. And so we've learned about alien planets here and there and all over the place. But going to Wakanda on our own planet Earth in its own way seemed as deep and foreign and fascinating as anywhere else in the galaxy we've gone, because they did give us that depth and have us learn just how different and unique it truly is.
Yeah, definitely.
So just taking a step back now and looking at where we are, because this is kind of a big important point in the MCU, because it's been said that Infinity War and, I guess to an extent, the Avengers film that's going to come a year later, somewhere in there, everything is going to change. And I believe that a lot of the cast of Infinity War is back for the following Avengers movie, but between the two of them, it's kind of looked at as a big sort of changing of the guard, almost like the end of the MCU as we know it, is the phrase that I believe has been tossed around. So, looking where we are now, looking back, what do we think about what should stay the same? What should change? What do we think is going to happen? And what will the MCU look like in a year and a half? Because at that point, we'll be beyond these movies.
Yeah, that's a hard question to answer because we really don't know anything. I will say that if you asked me 3 years ago when Age of Ultron came out, I would say that I would be very scared for kind of the first guard of major characters, your Tony Starks, your Steve Rogers. I would be kind of worried to see them leave. But I think that we're in really good hands because I heard from a report a while ago that they're kind of looking at Peter Parker and Spider-Man to kind of shepherd the MCU into its next real big phase. So I think that with the supporting characters we have with Spider-Man, Black Panther, Doctor Strange all coming into their own as these the kind of the core of the group, I would be very interested in that. I know that Robert Downey Jr. isn't going to be putting on the CGI costume forever. And so I feel like we're in good hands with Kevin Feige at the helm, and I trust what he's done. He's made very enjoyable films so far, and I'm really, really intrigued to see where it all goes because I don't know what's going to happen after Infinity War, and the following movies.
And it's really interesting because we've known about Infinity War for years. I mean, we've known about all the current movies going throughout the next year or so. For a long time, they announced them all years out. But there hasn't been a lot of talk since then about what comes next. And there hasn't been a lot of information released about Infinity War, which is very impressive because, you know, typically with the amount of curiosity around it, there'd be a lot more leaking out by now with a movie that's, you know, pretty much already made. So, like you said, we really have no idea what to expect. You know, quite honestly, we don't really have any idea what to expect from Infinity War, or, you know, I'm not sure. Do you follow like the television products as well that surround the movies?
I do not. I do not follow the. I started a little bit a while ago, but it became a lot to kind of keep up to date with. So I have not kept up with them lately. No.
Do you think, you know, that's a good question. And I can speak to this as well, because like I said, I started with that intention of watching everything when there was a lot less to watch. But do you think there is a point of, I'm not sure if overkill is too strong a word, but do you think maybe there is a bit of an oversaturation as far as all the different things that you feel like you need to watch in order to get the complete picture of what's going on in the MCU?
I think that's an interesting question because for a couple of years now, ever since Age of Ultron, maybe even before that came out, there was a lot of talk of superhero fatigue kind of setting in, that people were going to get sick of these Marvel characters. And I believe to an extent, because like I said, I haven't seen much of the television series, and though they tie into the movies events, the movies you can just watch flat out without having any knowledge of the TV series. So I like how they keep it accessible to the audience who's just seen the movies. I will say that it's kind of to the question of kind of fatigue with it. Logically, I would think that with all these very similar action movies coming out, people would get sick of them. And I was a bit concerned myself. It was about the time when Civil War and Batman v Superman were coming out, and Deadpool came out that year, as well as X-Men Apocalypse. I was thinking this might get a little trying on me to see all these comic book movies, and I thought maybe the audience would feel the same way, but like we said, Black Panther just had one of the biggest weekends in history. So apparently it's not setting in for a lot of people. It hasn't really set in with me. I'm so looking forward to Infinity War. It's very surreal that it's happening because like we said earlier, we've known it was going to happen, and it just feels like insane that it's actually happening in less than 2 or 3 months. So I would say that it does run the risk of causing some fatigue, but it hasn't failed so far. I like the way they've handled the universe with the show separately with the movies. So, yeah.
Well, the thing I think that I originally wasn't a big fan of, but, looking at the big picture was probably the smart thing to do is in the beginning, say the first few years of the MCU's existence, they lived and died by that credo of it's all connected. That was a big marketing phrase for them, where there was so much connection, not only between the movies, but in the early days of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was a lot of direct connection when they could get it. They had Lady Sif from the first couple Thor movies, guest starring on some episodes, and there was just a bit more back and forth. Of course, the main character of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., Agent Coulson, comes directly from the MCU and the early movies there. They've certainly backed away from that in the last few years. And, whether it's just a matter of it being too difficult to try to plan ahead and try to connect a TV show that's filming every week with movies that are filming much further in advance, whatever the case may be, they've just sort of had a bit more separation where there'll be references on the TV shows to things that are happening in the MCU, but it's all just kind of connective tissue to make you feel like you're watching the same thing, but there's no interplay really between any of the characters or any of the actions going on anymore. So, I mean, I guess it's great for, especially for someone like you who focuses on the movies. Yeah. The TV shows are basically optional. They're optional extra credit, if you will. So that seems to work out best for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. And what I think, like you said, I do remember when with the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., they were trying to connect everything back then. And I think that it was smart that they realized that with the main Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, you have 2-hour pieces of entertainment coming out every 6 months. But but you have to really binge and keep up with these television shows, especially when there's so many of them. So if they would put characters like Daredevil or Jessica Jones in the movies, I would say that a good amount of the audience, the general audience, would think, who are these people? So I think that it's probably the best decision that they retroactively kind of pulled away from that kind of thought process and just made quality TV by itself.
Yeah, it's tough because those seasons are 13 episodes long, which is essentially probably right around 12 hours of TV each one. That's quite a commitment. And, personally, I think that some of the Netflix content is some of the best stuff that Marvel has put out, but it's just too hard to demand that people watch all that in order to fully appreciate everything. So yeah, I mean, little cameos here and there. I think, especially in a movie like Infinity War, I feel like there's a way to do it harmlessly where it wouldn't cause confusion for people who don't watch, but would definitely drive those who do watch absolutely crazy and get people very excited. But if it's not to be, it's not to be, and it's probably the smarter way to go.
Yeah, for sure. And Infinity War already has a huge cast. It's such a huge ensemble of just so many different main characters in the universe that it would be kind of a bit hard to juggle it, I think.
Yeah.
As it is.
Yeah, definitely. So now we're looking at the next one's Infinity War. And this is interesting because originally, I guess the working titles for the Avengers movies were Infinity War Part 1 and Part 2. They're going to come out a year apart. But there is going to be a couple of movies in between the two of them. They've since changed that. So that second Avengers movie, they haven't released the title yet, but it will not be Infinity War Part 2. It'll be something different. Mm-hmm. But you have to believe that there's some sort of cataclysmic event of some sort taking place in the first one that will affect the MCU for quite some time and carry over to the second Avengers movie. So the question then is, how does this affect the movies that are going to pop up between these two?
Oh, I believe, it's a very interesting question to see how this kind of all stacks up, because I believe that they played it kind of smart, but a little confusing. So I believe that Ant-Man and the Wasp, part of the movie actually takes place before Infinity War, but it's set for a release after Infinity War has been in theaters. So, which is a little odd, but I think that's kind of smart to play because Ant-Man is one of your smaller heroes who kind of handles things on a more street level. So it might be a little awkward in delivery since it did happen beforehand. And I believe Captain Marvel, Captain Marvel is the next film set to be released, and that I believe takes place in the 90s. So
yes.
Yeah, so I believe that they've kind of avoided maybe the possible run-ins between that could happen between Avengers 3 and 4, if you know what I mean. Are there any other films that are set that I'm forgetting right now, or are those the only two?
I don't think so. I think those are the two. I think you're absolutely right. Awesome. Then we go into the next Avengers movie, and I know the one following that is the Homecoming 2, or what it's called right now, the next Spider-Man movie, which will apparently directly deal with the ramifications of everything goes on. So at that point, it's a whole new world. And, maybe what you were alluding to earlier comes to pass in that it's a changing of the guard, and Spider-Man is much higher on the superhero food chain than he was before these two Avengers movies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that they did I really enjoyed, because with the first 5 Spider-Man movies that we got in the last 2 decades, they've done the same kind of Uncle Ben kind of story arc. But I do really enjoy the fact that they kind of have Tony being the mentor to Spider-Man, and he's kind of looking for his kind of stamp of approval. So and this is just me speculating, I kind of think that Tony is going to either bite the dust in one of these coming movies or experience some sort of big tragedy to do with his character. So I think if my guesses are right, I think that'll be interesting to see how Peter reacts with that. And I think it's a switch up from the usual Uncle Ben kind of situation.
That's really interesting. And it's, Tony Stark obviously has the benefit of time and history since he's been part of the MCU since the very first movie. But what a great decade-long character that has been built with him. And if what you're talking about comes to pass, that's just a continuation of what we've seen for years, which is basically Tony Stark's daddy issues and the issues that he had with his own father and him trying to struggle with the idea of being that father figure. We saw it in Avengers 3 when he was with that kid, and moving on to Peter Parker, just trying to kind of, I guess, pay it forward in a way that he finds better than what his father did for him.
Mm-hmm, for sure. And just another really kind of like a thumbs up to the MCU is how they, from the very first Iron Man, they established that Tony, like subtly they established that Tony had these issues with his father, and subtly throughout, even with the Captain America, the first Avenger, and then culminating in Civil War when we get the huge reveal with Bucky Barnes, and just seeing his progression in that movie, just how far his character has kind of come. And with that kind of story arc with his father, which has kind of been like the key to everything. And it's just really great storytelling. So, and I do enjoy the fact that he has kind of taken that mentor role to Peter Parker. I think that's a really way to kind of insert Peter into this universe. But yeah, just really great storytelling from the perspective of Tony Stark and his family issues, I guess.
And that's very, very worrying as you're saying this right now, because you're starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together now. You've got a guy who's kind of maturing, kind of moving into that father figure role that maybe he was hoping or wanting to do for so many years. As we saw in Spider-Man Homecoming, he is back with Pepper Potts and nearing potential matrimony. He's moving closer to his happily ever after phase, which means that it's very worrisome that he could be a goner anytime now.
Yeah, for sure. That's a sad way to think about it, but I think that's really true. I think that everything they've set up, I'm big into speculating on what's going to be the plot of the movie, but like when I actually go to the movie, I can kind of set that aside and enjoy what's going to happen. But I think everything with what they're setting up with what they set up with Captain America, the Civil War, how the two are kind of divided. I think it's kind of the perfect setup to send off one of those characters and kind of maybe sacrifice themselves for kind of the benefit of the other to kind of like make amends, I would say. And be,
and it's interesting because if you step back and look at it from a very abstract perspective, when you look at the strong relationships or the complicated relationships in the MCU, forget about the romantic stuff. Probably the ties that truly bind between any two people in the MCU, it's the story of Steve Rogers and Tony Stark and the history that not only have they shared since the Avengers, but really since Tony Stark's childhood and even beyond that. I mean, Steve Rogers has been a part of Tony Stark's life his entire life. Mm-hmm. You almost feel, and again, this is kind of a bummer to say, but you almost feel like storyline wise, the most beautiful thing that could happen is if they go out together.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, for sure. And I think that would be a proper way to send them off. And where these because we've kind of set up a realistic world in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not in the fact that there's like vibranium and these superpowered people, but it's kind of grounded in a certain reality, and they haven't really pulled the trigger with a lot of characters besides maybe like Quicksilver and Coulson on the big screen, but Coulson comes back obviously in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. But I think that would be really risky of them. I think it would be, but like you said, a really good send off, a good, a poignant kind of message to send for the future of the MCU.
Yeah. I mean, I guess if it's done well enough, we'll kind of be able to forgive them for the absolute depression that is sure to follow. But my goodness, but I mean, it's going to be big things, positive, negative. Definitely we're expecting 2018 and 2019 to be tugging at our heartstrings one way or the other within the MCU. well, we're running out of time, but before we get out of here, we should probably cover some of the basics. So let me ask you, so far, 10 years of MCU, what is your favorite movie that they've put out so far?
That is so hard to answer. I would say, could I do a kind of a top few or top three?
Sure.
All right, top three. I would say the number one movie would probably be, just as a film itself, probably be Captain America: The Winter Soldier. Maybe number two would be kind of clumped together the first and second Guardians of the Galaxy movies. I think that the second Guardians of the Galaxy movie is very underrated. And I think in that third, that's kind of cheating because it's kind of two movies in one. And I think for the third movie, I would say Captain America: Civil War, but that's not to downplay Iron Man that started it off, and the first Avengers movie. All great films, but it's tough to narrow it down. What's your favorite?
It's funny that you say that because it sounds like you're apologizing for cheating on the other ones that you didn't mention. It's okay. But, it's funny that you say Guardians too, because I remember going to the movie theater, and that's just one of those movies that you go to the theater, maybe you're kind of tired, maybe you're not in the right frame of mind. And I remember sitting there just being like, I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. I thought it was trying too hard to just give more of what the first one did organically. But man, Netflix is a miracle. I mean, I have watched Guardians 2 on Netflix many a time over the past couple of months.
Yeah, for sure.
And and I've found sort of the emotion in that, and that movie has become, like, back in the day, there was a movie called Beaches with Bette Midler.
Okay.
Where I guess Bette Midler died in it or whatever. Like that was like a precursor to your typical Lifetime movie of today.
Yeah.
And like anyone who, anyone who had a movie that was like their favorite movie that made them cry, it was Beaches. And I think, like, for me, if I feel like watching a movie that's going to make me like get emotional for some reason, it's become Guardians 2 because it's really, really effective. And it's like you said, really underrated as far as sort of developing the motivations of those characters. I think Rocket Raccoon is the most like emotionally developed and relatable character in one of the most in the entire MCU. I think it's a very underrated character.
Oh yeah, I agree totally. And coming out of, because I watched some movie review channels and websites, but I heard a lot of that about from Guardians 2 that they didn't like it because it was trying too hard with the comedy. But coming out of it, like you said, the character work with all the emotion, and they're such risky movies because literally the last shot of Guardians 2 is a raccoon crying, and it's so it's so emotionally charged. And for sure, I think that Rocket is a very, very emotionally relatable character.
Unbelievable. Well, hopefully we'll have a lot more emotion and action and all kinds of cool stuff to be talking about once we get closer to Avengers season and everything that comes after it. But hey, before we get out of here, why don't you go ahead and plug everything that you appear on at Public House?
All right. Well, you can find me at my show, Cinema Stories. It's kind of a comedy, movie review, news kind of show. I really enjoy doing it. It comes out bi-monthly, I should say, on Tuesdays. You can find me on Spreaker, Stitcher, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. You can follow me at Twitter at Samuel_J_Kirby or Sam Kirby 17 on Instagram.
Cool. Well, Sam, it's been awesome to talk to you, man. It's great to talk to someone who appreciates something the way that you appreciate something and kind of share that out with the world as well. Hopefully you guys appreciate the MCU as well. If not, hey, maybe you'd like to check it out on Netflix, or maybe you'd like to go see Black Panther if you're one of those 5 people in the country who haven't seen it yet. 4 thumbs up from us. But thanks a lot for joining us this week, man.
Thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
All right, cool. Talk to you later. Thanks.
Bye. Thanks.